Hi, everyone, and welcome to this Talk Insomnia episode. And Sierra, I'm actually extra special that you're extra happy that you're here because we're going to talk about a topic that's so important, and just you being willing to talk about it is going to bring so much value to the channel and help so many people. But with that said, how are things going?
They're going good, kind of up and down, I would say. But for the most part, I think everything's okay.
I'm super glad to hear that.
Yeah.
And for those of you who don't know Sierra, you've been a real supporter of the channel. You were here maybe like 4 months ago sharing your success story after having worked with me. But as is so very typical and normal and happens all the time, you ran into like a speed bump here lately.
Yeah.
And so that's where I really wanted a chance to talk to you about it. And this is so important because oftentimes people, when this happens, people think, oh, I'm doing something wrong, or feel a little bit embarrassed, like they did something wrong, something like that. So it's just so important to talk about it. But what happened? And then we can go from there.
Well, obviously I don't want to say I was doing good. I was just sleeping, and that's just
exactly.
what it was. And then I guess one day turned into, one day of, I don't know what happened. I think we did have a fire in my apartment. So that was like it was in our trash chute. Wow. And for the first night, we couldn't sleep in our room because our room is right above the chute. So, all right, next to the chute. So we slept in the living room, and, I guess I was stressed out about it, and I was just like, what's going on? And I thought it was going to happen again. So I hadn't slept that night. And so then it kind of went from there. And I'd say that was about, I really don't try to, and I don't try to think about it, but I was like, okay, that's kind of when it happened. It was about weeks ago, I think. So it was a little bit a while ago. And so I think one night kind of went into the next night, and then I was like, wait, I know everything. And I said, this should be different. I should be able to, just brush this off. But for some reason, I'm not brushing it off. And, and so then I kind of started to panic a little bit because I was again thinking about like what we talked about. I was again thinking about November, and I was like, oh no, but then I said, well, Coach Daniel says to just imagine that it's gonna, like it happens again. And so, I was doing that, but though, since the feeling of frustration does come back, and like, what am I doing wrong? Why am I, like, I should know better. And I wrote that to you so many times, like, I should know better. But that's kind of like what my mindset was, and so recently I've been really trying to befriend wakefulness at night, and that's really the big deal, the biggest one for me. So that's really what my what my journey has been till now. And like I said, I don't try to count like what days I did sleep, what days were kind of rough. I just kind of try to go through the motions, and I'm just like, whatever, I understand that my anxiety is a little high because of that. And I feel like one night turns to another night because you're like anxious about it again, and it's okay to be anxious, but it just happens. So that's like where I'm at.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And now I think, you have so much clarity, which is fantastic. But I think, or let me ask you this, which was, it sounds like it's pretty clear to you that sometimes when we think like, I know so much, so this shouldn't happen to me, that can become sort of an extra pressure from knowing. Like, does that sound make sense?
Yes, trust me, it does. I mean, it's the reason why like, I'm a crier, and I tell you all the time, like, Coach Daniel, I cried, because I get frustrated again with myself. And there's that self-compassion again, where you're like, it's okay that you have all this knowledge, and your brain again is trying to protect you and is trying to keep you safe. So even if it tells you, oh no, that's not why, or this is something else, just know that that's it trying to protect you and keep you safe. And, it's like those negative thoughts can come in and creep in, but, make sure just that's where it gets tough, because my brain's like, but everything. So what's the problem? Or I tell myself that. So it can become like discouraging too, because you're like, but I can just turn on Coach Daniel's video, or I could just, if whatever, but everything you say, it's like I can predict that you're going to say that. So there is a lot of pressure I put on myself, because I'm like, I know this, but it gets, I think that's what makes it a little more frustrating,
Yes,
when that.
exactly. So if we look at this, like the discouragement comes from like, I know so much, I already know what Daniel's going to say, and still I'm like anxious sometimes, and still I have some trouble sleeping, after having not thought about it for a long time. And so I think what this leads to is kind of like almost like the second layer of self-compassion, which is like I'm discouraged, which means I'm to some degree a little bit hard on myself, and then going towards like, but I don't need to be like hard on myself for being discouraged, if you will. Like, I'm already a little bit hard on myself, and that's okay. It's like, it's okay to be hard on yourself too. It's kind of almost the second layer of self-compassion, if you will. But did that make sense?
Yeah, I think so, because again, it feels like you kind of would be running from it, if you're like, like if you say it's okay to be discouraged versus saying I'm discouraged and I'm mad and I'm angry, and I don't like it, go away. So it becomes, like you like to say, or like it becomes sticky, and it'll stay, and it'll kind of like fester and get worse. And then I think that's when, for me, the crying comes, and then I just want to just like, shut the world off and just nobody talk to me, because it's kind of like I'm not telling myself it's okay to be, it's okay to just have a bad night. And from that, if I'm a little discouraged or a little hard, you say that's okay too, that's fine too, because it's pretty much like confronting the emotions, and then, telling yourself that's fine, that's okay. We all go through it. It's okay. So, yeah.
And let me ask you this, like, you weren't thinking about sleep at all, really. And I know I always talk about like, it's helpful not to keep track of time and things like that. That is true. But just for the context of like, kind of like educating, general education, let's say, you were not thinking about sleep at all until this happened, the fire, which is like, I mean, it's kind of such an obvious trigger, right? Because there's a fire, you have to sleep elsewhere. Of course, part of your brain is going to be thinking about what if I can't sleep and things like that. That is going to reactivate. That's nothing strange about that. But then, since that happened, you wrote one email that I read on the channel, which was like you had kind of like an epiphany moment, and then maybe you had some more struggle again. But it's like within this speed bump, so to speak, like, do you feel like you're sort of on your path towards not thinking about sleep anymore, or do you feel like you're still kind of stuck in that? Or?
Yeah, I mean, like I told you, befriending wakefulness is a real thing. Like, it's real, because I feel like it's something I told my fiance too. I was saying, like, between learning, like your education, and then I don't want to say applying it, but kind of like releasing the pressure, you can still have a bad night, you can, or not a bad night, you can still have a not so great night of sleep, but when you really accept that being awake at night is okay, you will never be, you'll never be the same anymore, because you won't see it as a threat. I think what happens is we learn, and then, something can happen. It can trigger, I guess, your emotions back to the, the big one. And you're like, oh my God, you're kind of scared again at night. You're scared to be awake. You're scared to, so even with education, it's like, you're like, it's good and you have all, nothing will happen, but it's the stress of being awake at night that can really knock you down. I don't want to be awake. I was doing just fine. I was sleeping. I was okay. And then at night, night comes and you're like 3 o'clock in the morning and you're like, oh my gosh, it's getting later. It's getting later. It's getting later. And I got to get up in the morning to go to work or whatever, And so then that can trigger another night, which can trigger another night, which can trigger another night. So I think driving home the fact that you really do have to say, I'm up at 3 and I am just fine. I'm up at 5 and I am just fine. I'm up at 6 and the sun is coming up and I'm just fine. Like, that's a point that is really like, I can't stress it enough, because there's really nothing else to sleep anxiety, just being scared to be awake, like you teach. And so my anxiety, I've noticed comes, number one, when he knocks out and he's snoring and I'm like frustrated, but I'm like, again, like you said, sleep envy. But then I just like, whatever, he has a stressful job. It is what it is. And then seeing the sun peek through the blinds in the morning. And I'm like, oh, but even then you just say, that's fine. That's okay. And I think that's what acceptance is saying, like, getting to that point is when you can truly feel like you're free, and you can let it go for good, sleep anxiety for good. Because I think, to be honest, we all were there pre-sleep anxiety. Like, we were all at this point where, we would be up at 6 or 7 and we wouldn't care, or whatever. If you were doing something or you had a vacation or you had something, you just up like, I'm ready to go. I'm excited, and then, so what's the difference between that and then, just having an off night? So it's something I feel like befriending wakefulness is a practice. It's definitely like something you have to practice. It's not something that you can say, okay, I'll befriend it. That's it. That's done. No, it's definitely something you have to keep working at, like,
Absolutely, well said. And and if we look at that, like, what's the difference between being up at 4 a.m. before you ever had any trouble sleeping, or when you have it or had it in the past? Is that it's just that little trigger that some part of your brain thinks this is dangerous, right? Which leads to like something that I'm beginning to talk more about that I think will maybe be helpful to you, Sarah, and everybody else that hears this, which is, it can be difficult for someone who hears this to say, like, how can you say it's fine I'm being up at 4 because I feel such and such and such a way during the day? So I think another way to say the same thing is, instead of using the word fine, using the word safe. That, it's 5 a.m. and I don't feel good. I'm stressed, but I'm safe. I'm safe. There is no danger right now. And then it's not like this fine can have like kind of almost like a label to it. Like, I should think it's fine, but I don't. So why, etc. But safe. I'm safe right now. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense, because again, it's just telling your brain, like, I'm fine. No, but I'm not fine, because that can trigger something else. So saying you're safe, right now, if you feel like just resting, rest, but with the thought that you are safe. And that makes a lot of sense. I think that makes sense.
Now, something else that I wanted to talk about was this. You shared that there was you came. I think you saw this talk I did with Alex Seguze, and you talked about like how the 8-hour thing has been so imprinted that it's like it's. Can you share a little bit more on that topic?
Yeah. So the 6 to 8 hour thing was, he was pretty much saying, like, the studies, you can't really put that on everybody because everybody goes through something different. There's so many different situations that happen in people's lives. People who suffer depression may sleep way more, then that's like one of the symptoms. So yeah, putting that on us, just, and then reading it and then hearing it all the time. Cause we went away this past weekend and I listened to a podcast and they threw out something, a fact about sleep. And I was like, oh my God, how can they say that? And it was just like, well, if you don't, I'm not going to say it, but that I was just like, that was very irresponsible. I gave them a month off. I said, I'm not listening to them for a month for that because now I'm mad. They just spread that information. They said so there was no who did the study, what was, how was it conducted? None of that. It was very irresponsible just to throw that fact out there. So I'm like, if someone didn't have sleep anxiety, they probably do now. They listening to that, So there's just this, no one's really got this conclusive like evidence of that every single person on earth needs that amount. Like I said, every situation is different. And so hearing that again for over 28 years, it's hard to unlearn that, and to say, oh, the 6 hours, as long as, like you said, as long as I know I'm safe, and I may feel a little, icky in the morning, or I may not, I may feel a little groggy or whatever. I'm safe and I'm okay. That label on me is a lot of pressure. 6 to 8 hours is a lot of pressure. So when I don't get it and then I stress about it and then one night leads to the next, how is that productive? How does that help the general population? It should be, you can function, you can do everything you can do as long as you feel like, as long as you feel okay, you will feel okay. You will be okay. So I think just that 6 to 8 hours is very, it's too confined, to put on everybody. It's definitely something that I feel needs to change, and that's my thoughts on it.
100%. And I'm kind of optimistic long term that I think at some point it will change, because like the truth is sticky. Like the truth always comes out like on top in the end. Like we will get there, but
yeah,
it is very problematic, like you say. And here's something that I think about sometimes is that many people who are even like really, really well-meaning and they have a great podcast and things like that, they still don't understand that sleep is nothing we can control. And just like most people understand somehow intuitively that we can't really control our emotions, right? But a lot of people who understand that don't really understand sleep. So to me, it's become this thing where when people say, be sure to sleep this amount, it's just the same as if you'd say to someone like, be sure to be really happy. Like just make sure you're really happy and you're really calm. Just make sure you're really happy and calm.
All the time.
And it's like all the time. It's like, how can I do that?
Right.
It's like,
right.
That's insane. How can I do that? It's the same thing, but people don't understand it.
Yeah. And then if you force it, or if you're told, okay, you have to be happy during the day for 8 hours, and you're like, but I'm not happy, and you hit like say hour 4 and you're like, okay, am I just supposed to walk around with a smile on my face? I'm forcing it, it's kind of the same thing. And then it puts pressure on you like, oh my gosh, I'm doing it wrong.
Exactly. It's the pressure. And then when you're not happy in this example, when you're not happy, then comes the berating yourself. Like, why am I not happy? Everybody else is happy. Like, I can't do it. There's something wrong with me.
Yeah. Everybody else is walking around smiling and, just being jolly and happy. And then now something's wrong. I got to do something about it. Let me go get something, I mean, I feel like what it is.
Yeah, I know.
Let me go buy something to make me happy. And there goes another market going up.
Right. I think that hopefully that's kind of the changing. The switch will happen when people see it like that, and these kind of well-meaning people in the wellness space, they realize that I can't say this because it doesn't make sense, and I'm actually not doing people a favor by saying this.
Right. I mean, if they know, right, that you can't control it, why would you tell people that?
I think honestly, Sarah, I think there's both. There are some people who know and they sort of like don't really care. They don't want to think about it, so they just say it anyway. I think that is true,
Mm.
but I think also a lot of people don't understand what they're saying. They have no clue what they're saying.
Yeah.
Because I've read many books from like people that one of my favorite authors, by the way, Claire Weeks from Australia. Like she has this deep, like really, really deep understanding of anxiety, right? And you read her book, and you're like, this is fantastic. And then it comes like, make sure you get 8 hours of sleep. You're like, how can she not see it? It's like, how can she not see it? But then she didn't. Like, I can't judge her or blame her either, because if you've never seen it, like, then you didn't see it.
Right. Exactly. I mean, that's what I say. I think that's why it becomes harder, you know. So say you have just one night, you know, and then you're like, but like, you know, there, you know, all the studies, you know that, you know, the 6 to 8 hour thing is not ideal for everybody, or it's not going to happen for everybody all the time, you know, but it's constantly hammered into you, you know, like away on vacation, just de-stress about, I mean, work and other stuff, you know, but, and then you hear that on my favorite podcast. And I was like, you know what, I'm giving y'all a month away, because that was so responsible, you know, to just put that out there like that. And they've said a lot of irresponsible things, but this one was just like, oh my gosh, I can't with, you know, but just that with nothing behind it. And then they move on to the next topic. I'm just, you know, so when you go and that's what I mean, it's kind of like brainwash. I feel like, unbrainwash yourself is another step in the process.
That's a strong word, but I think it's appropriate. It's like we have been brainwashed in a way. That's so true.
Yeah.
All right. But yeah, overall, like, you know, one thing that I like to say is whenever you know, again, like having like deep understanding and knowledge about yourself and insomnia, everything is obviously very, very helpful. But sometimes it can lead to pressure. That is also true.
Yeah.
But,
yes.
But at the same token, like when you have that understanding, like, I think what really helps is that you will never again go back to like Googling and researching, going to Reddit, trying supplements like that. So whenever you're not going towards the rabbit hole, you are going in the other direction. So and you always learn about yourself, and every speed bump you get past makes you less afraid of having one again, et cetera, et cetera. But like overall, like do you find that you think I'm gonna do fine, this was just a little thing, or do you feel like you have other questions or anything else you want to talk about?
Well, yeah, I think I do. I think it's even just saying like just one bad night that I stressed over, you know, and that's kind of like where I like to reduce it down to. And I just say, you know, it happens. And I say, that's why I say, and that's why you say a speed bump is inevitable, because every person has an off night. The difference between people with sleep anxiety and those without, you know, we will like stress about it and freak out a little bit, but it's, you know, everybody has them. That's why speed bumps are going to happen. Or just sleepless nights, you know, they're just going to happen. And it's just very important to, you know, to know again that when you start to realize, okay, maybe tonight, you know, sleep is not going to happen. I think that's when I say, or when you say befriending wakefulness is definitely key, because it's pretty much telling your brain, you know, that it's okay to be awake, and there's, you know, like you said, we're safe. You can find things that you know you can do, but for me personally, I don't really like doing things in the morning hours. I you know, I'm just like, I'll just rest or close my eyes, or, you know, get on the phone or get on YouTube or something, and then I'll figure it out, or I'll just lay here and I'll be okay, you know. And that's kind of what it is. You really have to find something that you enjoy, that takes your mind completely off of sleep. Sleep is not, you know, it's not like like I said last time, we put a lot on it, you know, it'll come. And I remember on Martin's video, he had a guest on there, and she was saying like sleep is like a shy friend. It never ever leaves you. It's just shy, you know. It's like she was saying something,
and good, right?
Yeah, she was like, like at the any type of like disturbance or something, it kind of hides because it's so shy. And then, you know, it'll come back. But just know she's always there with you. She's always there. And so I like to think about that too. Like, you know, it doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't. She'll come when when the situation is okay, you know, and everything is just fine. She'll come back. So that's kind of what it is. I think another thing I've been doing is watching your videos a lot more, like just to bring me comfort, not for education, like because I said I know pretty much everything. I think sometimes I'll go in and if I feel a little anxious, I'll put on Coach Daniel video and then I'll be like, okay, I'm okay now. Do you think that's healthy? Or I mean, or what would you say about that?
Yeah, you know, and by the way, so I don't forget that about sleeping a shy friend. I think that was such a great analogy. I'm gonna really use that one more. Thank you for sharing that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's such a great one. But okay. Yeah, no, I get that question off here and there. Like when people ask, like, especially when I have like a new client, they're like, I'm binging on your videos like all the time. Is that really good for me? Etc. I think if somebody asks me that, I say like, yeah, you're just learning. That's completely fine. And how about when you're like, you've had some trouble sleeping and you feel anxious again, then you're like, let me go back and listen to some of Coach Daniel's videos. I don't think that's a problem whatsoever. I think it's always the intent. It's like, when you are doing something because like you're trying to escape, like you're like, and not knowing so, you're like, I feel anxious. I don't want to feel anxious. What can I do to not feel anxious? Oh, I'm going to listen to Coach Daniel's videos. Now I'm listening. Am I still feeling anxious? No, I'm not. That is not helpful. When you're using something to try to escape an emotion, that is never helpful. But if you're just like, yeah, you know, I think I would like to tune into Coach Daniel's videos. And yeah, it does make me feel less anxious, but it's not like an act of escapism. And I'm aware of this. I'm completely aware. I see no problem whatsoever. In fact, I'm just happy that people kind of like stay in touch and tune in here and there and drop a comment here and there. And I think that's on my end, but for the person like tuning in to, I don't think that's a problem whatsoever when you have that clarity and insight.
Yeah. Okay. Because I noticed that, you know, one of these nights, I can't remember which night it was, but, you know, I tuned in and I wasn't feeling really great. And then immediately I watched a video and then I went to bed and I knocked out. And I was like, I want to be able to do that on my own. Like, I know that, like I said, it's a practice. And again, for me, I think the ultimate, I don't want to say goal, but is to really be okay with befriending wakefulness. Like I know, you know, that is the ultimate form of acceptance. And, you know, just saying even one more night, even, you know, next Tuesday night, you know, if it doesn't work out or if I'm not, you know, knocked out or whatever, sleep or whatever, I know that 3 o'clock rolls around, 4 o'clock rolls around, and I'm still not happy, but I'm still like, okay. And I'm still fine. I'm still safe. I still know all of this. And I can just say, well, you know, it's okay. And I don't need to turn to, you know, your videos, and I don't need to do, because I have it all in me. I can do it on my own, you know? And so that's what I want to say about that.
Yeah, no, this is so great you brought this up, Sierra. I think this became a really important teaching point here, which is that you know, I talk about this all the time, Befriending. I think it is really, really helpful when somebody's struggling to, but that said, it is sort of like, it's sort of like a path that you take. Yeah. It helps you take steps towards a place where being awake is not a threat. But that said, I think this is important. The important part here is that when you slept, you know, you didn't sleep well or sleep. You just slept, right? For some months, you kind of like just slept. And guess what? Was that because you were successfully befriending wakefulness? No, it wasn't. It was because you actually, there was nothing. Like you weren't befriending wakefulness. You know, you weren't doing anything at all, really. So I guess the point I'm trying to make is that if you make it sort of a goal to be at a place where you kind of can always befriend wakefulness, then that can actually, keep you in the struggle a little longer. But when you see it as just as like befriending wakefulness is something it can help me to think about that when I am struggling, but it's again, it's just something that kind of leads you to nothing, weirdly, like it leads you to nothing, and nothing is sort of where you want to be. Did that make sense?
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah, because like I said, if you notice that your anxiety, if you notice that your anxiety rolls around, say, 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, and it does nothing, like at some point you start to notice nothing, I'm okay with that too. I think it's a feeling, like it's just saying, okay, it's 3 in the morning and I'm just fine. It's not saying I'm befriending wakefulness now. It's not like declaring anything, but it's more so like I it's that time and I'm still fine. Like I'm okay. Or you just go to sleep, or you like sleep just happens because you're like, I know there's 2 outcomes that can happen, and that's something else I say to myself too sometimes. Like I know either I'll sleep tonight or I won't, or both of them are okay. So then you kind of have that feeling within you to say, either outcome is fine, but it's not something that you're like seek. So that's why I say maybe saying goal was the wrong word, but it's not something that you seek. It's more so something that you feel. So you'll know when, say around the time you normally get anxiety or something like that. If, you know that, okay, it's that time, or it's not that time because I'm not watching, but I'm still okay. You're calm and you're not stressing about the time, or you're not stressing about getting up in the morning. You're not stressing about anything like that. That's when like, you're going down a good path of, befriending wakefulness. And I don't want to say that that's something to, seek or something like that. It's just definitely just something you'll start to feel. Is that right?
Yeah. No, I mean, it's right. I think you're starting to feel like, okay, wakefulness is becoming my friend. I'm safe. But then eventually you won't even think about befriending wakefulness. It's just like,
you won't even think about it.
And that's
when I say that's where you've accepted, you've accepted that the 2, like I said, there's different outcomes that can happen. I don't even want to say 2 outcomes. I don't know what else can happen during the night.
Yeah, exactly.
there's a lot of things that can happen, but like as long as you're okay with all of them, you're just like, it's fine. Everything is okay. And I really feel like that, 20 years down the line, I have a sleepless night, and and then it's saying, okay, this is just like all the other ones, and you just keep on going. And so I think that's that point where you're like, I've accepted, any outcome, and I'm okay with them.
100%. And I think that's 2 things that just came to my mind as we were talking. Was one that I often hear from people saying, like, what you talk about befriending wakefulness, it's not easy. And then my thinking becomes, that's so true, because for someone who isn't struggling, it's easy to say, like, if you're awake at night, kind of try to befriend it. That's like, yeah, sure, I can do that. It's easy because I'm almost never awake at night. Like it's easy for that person. It's not easy if you have had trouble sleeping, and wakefulness seems like the thing that's, caused all this trouble. So for anyone out there, it's not easy in that regard. Not that it requires effort, easy, but completely understand that.
It's a journey. It's a path. Yeah, it's a journey. It's a journey to pretty much acceptance. And for people that, I guess, like for me, I have high anxiety, so even the journey to learning about myself, like during this whole situation, I feel like I'm, I do meditate. I'm started to meditate at night, and I, not as a means to anything, just to,
be present.
I enjoy it,
Yes.
I really do enjoy meditation. Like I look forward to it at night, and I take walks and things like that. And that's just, it's like all part of my journey, and it's definitely what's helping me.
What else was I say? Oh yeah. I just one thing in terms of like goals. I think I posted this video the other day where I pondered this a lot. Did you see that? about goals?
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that having like a goal to be like, even if I don't sleep, I'm going to be kind to myself. Like, I think that those are kind of like goalless goals, which are like non-achievement goals. That can be helpful. But okay, well, yeah, I think, I just want to say that it's, and something else I've pondered so much lately is like this, why is it that, we humans, we are so afraid of sometimes like being different or being vulnerable, right? I've pondered it's because we're kind of a flock, and like we're an animal like that likes like to be in a tribe, right? And when we feel like we are a little bit different, it's so triggering to us because it almost feels like we're unsafe. We're not part of the community, like that. So this was a long way of saying, like, you coming on and sharing this speed bump you had is like so incredibly helpful, because so many people are going to see this and think, oh, Sierra, she was she was quote unquote doing so well, and then she had a speed bump, but so there's nothing wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with me. And so I think it's going to be so incredibly helpful. So I would really, really want to thank you, Sierra.
Yeah, I just want to say, like, again, it's just one not so great night of sleep that turns in, because you're anxious about that night. Now you start to think about it, but you'll be fine. Like, everything will work out, and it happens, because that's why I say, like, you'll learn, and then you'll probably have one off night, and then you'll be like, okay, it's back, but it's not back. It's just, it's normal. Like, everybody has, not so great nights. My fiance is, he's like, oh yeah, I didn't sleep. I only slept like 3 hours last night, and he's just goes about his day and eats and does, he's like, but I said, for somebody with sleep anxiety, that's like the end of the world, it's just learning yourself and learning, that it's a journey. And even if you do great and then you have one off night, it's just what it is. Like, it's going to happen. It's inevitable that you're going to have an off night. You're going to have stressors in life. Things are going to happen. And, it may affect your sleep that night, but it affects every person on this earth's sleep if they have a stressful,
100%.
And it's just, you just go on. You just go on.
And speaking of stressors, why was there a fire in your chute?
Oh my gosh. I think we have a lot of, people off the street that come into our apartment because we don't have a gate. So I think they were saying that somebody probably flicked a cigarette in there, and then or somebody had something hot that they threw down our chute, and then it caught on fire. So it was insane. It was so scary because our chute's like right here. And so, we were the first to smell it. We were sitting on a couch, and he's like, do you smell something? And I said, no, I don't smell anything. And so then he opens up our blinds, and all we see was orange everywhere. And it was so scary. So we just ran outside, and it was an insane night.
Had the alarm not gone off, or?
The alarm went, well, by the time we opened the blinds, and then I was like getting dressed, trying to put on my clothes. That's why I say have an emergency bag, because I'm like scrambling, trying to find clothes to put on. And so by that time the alarms went off. That's when our like fight or flight, jumped in, and we ran downstairs, and so, yeah.
Oh, gosh.
And that's something else. Sorry, I know we're probably going over, but I told you I was reading The Power of Now, and that's something we're both practicing, or like, just kind of going through. And I said, my speed bump journey is like a spiritual journey almost, because, he said, Eckhart Tolle says, live in the moment, in the now, right now, because he said, if there is a life or death situation, you'll know what to do, but the past and the future don't matter, because that's what anxiety is stressing about the future. And he said, but right now, living in this moment is what's important, but, and so I was thinking that day for the fire, I said, yeah, we were just fine. But when fight or flight kicks in, it's time to go, your body, he knows what you're supposed to do. So I thought that was interesting and important to know.
Yeah, it's so, oh my gosh. And now you said spiritual journey, which was like kind of my moment when I completely saw it so clearly was when what's her name? Sasha Stevens was a guest on the channel, and she was like having insomnia, and the path towards not struggling. It is a spiritual journey, and I was like, that's so true. Like maybe for some people it's kind of like they had a little fleeting trouble sleeping. It's not that, but when you've had like really struggle sleeping, it is like learning about yourself. How do I respond to things? Like, and then when she said that, I'm like, this is kind of like what that makes me sort of like a spiritual teacher, which sounds kind of woo-woo, right? But when she said that, I'm like, yeah. And then I was like, and then I was seeing like, and this has been a spiritual journey for me too, because when you teach all these things, then you can't help but think about yourself. And then I became like this. So anyway, I'm just going to say that like, it is a spiritual journey for all of us, right?
Yeah, that's a good observation. It definitely is. I mean, it's just like you say, your mind wants to keep you safe. Your brain wants to keep you safe, and studying that, and then how to, like you say, do a thought download or go there. And I'm like, that can be very scary for some people. To try to put their brain in that moment. And if like you say, if they lose their job, people are like, oh, that's very scary, but really it's a very important thing to do, because that fear is only there because you kind of escape it. I don't want to think about that, so the more you don't want to think about it, the bigger it becomes, because like you said, it's trying to scream out to you, hey, there's something here, let's observe it, let's analyze it, and so you're like, no, I don't want to hear it. So it'll start to just get bigger and bigger and bigger, and and because of that, it sticks to you. It's hard to shed. It's harder to shed. So by all of this is from you, from Eckhart Tolle, from just all of just realizing that being okay with your anxiety, almost making it your friend, is not easy, and it's not like I don't want to make it seem like it's just something you could just do tomorrow and everything's great. It's a path, and it's a journey, and it's important though, and that's something I'm learning every day on my own.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's, I guess the last thing I want to add to that is that it's if you read Eckhart Tolle, or now I talk to Sasha Stevens, or all the kind of like sound teaching out there, it's all the same. It's all the same. Yeah. But in like, I think it's helpful to find a voice or a teacher that resonates with you, but it's the core of it. It's all the same. But anyway, I was to say,
I mean, that's why I looked for Eckhart Tolle, because you had, you suggested him. And it wasn't like, and like, I try not to go, okay, well, now let me try this spiritual teacher, this spiritual teacher. I'm like, no, Coach Daniel's like literally my only source, because that's something we talked about, my fiance and I, and then I have my therapist, and she talks about, and she's like, don't try to go to know a lot of people. And I said, oh, I don't. I just use, who you suggested, because I trust you. And then, and that's it, just you and Eckhart Tolle. And it's pretty much, like I said, it all goes into each other. So it really is, you're teaching me that it's not, again, even though it's a speed bump, it's not something that is, you can just overcome tomorrow. It's still a journey, it's still like unlearning, like we talked about. It's unlearning, but it's me understanding that, and saying, oh yeah, that's true. It is unlearning. It is, relearning a new thing and unlearning something I've been learning for years, and something that's why it's not easy,
Absolutely. Yeah. Very, very well. Well, I'll say thanks again so much for coming on, Sierra, and just stay in touch. Let us know how things go, and I'll look forward to talking to you soon.
Okay. See ya.